panel.
I could ask our speakers from this morning to join us on the panel. We're going to try Slido and ask a couple of questions, and there's going to be a prize at the end. That was a great talk, Trish. I really enjoyed it. And one of the little interesting snippets I got from that was if you're into animal welfare and you want to do things for animals, it doesn't always have to involve animals. It could be hosting someone from across the world who's going to do training in spay-neuter techniques or something else. And the other thing is bring cookies. Definitely a winner. Certainly in vet clinics I visit, it's always going to make you more popular if you bring food. The other thing that I just thought is a good reminder is obviously for those shelters to identify their hotspots, they've got to measure them. And I think counting, Shelter Animals Count is a great initiative, but counting who's coming in, where are your hotspots for demand is very useful because then you can address those issues. One little piece of housekeeping, at the end of this session, there is one copy. I don't want to start a stampede or anything, but there is only one copy left of the Field Manual for Small Animal Medicine at the Getting to Zero exhibit. So if you're desperate for that, just keep that in mind. So we have a couple of questions on Slido, or you can enter your questions. Billy, should I use my phone to check which ones, or are they going to come up on the screen? All right, so I guess to perhaps Holly, we'd love to adopt some of these ideas. How do you fund your work?
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, so the funding for Spayathon, actually we do get a portion of it from HSUS themselves, but it's definitely not enough to cover the entire Spayathon for Emancipet, so we do active fundraising for that specifically. So when we hold events, usually they're in Austin, sometimes Houston as well, and we tell the story about Spayathon and why we're doing it. We show the videos and everything like that, and we're just amazed that the community back in mainland is so supportive. But if we don't raise enough money in that manner, then we actually will supplement with funds that we have dedicated for our spay neuter at home, because we feel it's such an important initiative that we're participating in.
Thank you. And are you going to publish a sort of a how-to manual so that people can produce that program other veterinary teams or other organizations could do it elsewhere, replicate that?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think that would probably fall to HSUS, since they're the organizers and leaders of Spayathon, and I haven't heard if that is in the works or not. All as I know right now is that they're collecting data and they plan to publish an abstract about a Spayathon, but that's a great idea, and I'll suggest that to them.
One thing to add, I've done a little bit of fundraising. I didn't know you were going to be here, but I've done some fundraising for Emancipet. Just my Puerto Rican street dog has put up a little thing on her birthday on my page and said, I would like some money for Emancipet, put a goal up, and she's raised, I think, $1,000 last year just for her birthday. So little bits count.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
That's great. And okay, so another question, I think maybe Kristen, how do you talked about transparency in your talk, so how do you talk about euthanasia rates without compromising funding for your shelter?
So that's a great question, because people, often my colleagues and I, are afraid to talk about animals that are dying, because we feel some shame or embarrassment around that, or we feel like it will turn people off, and actually the opposite happens. When we're totally transparent and we talk about our struggles and our challenges and we share those, we're giving people the opportunity to help. So we will never talk about a challenge without telling people how they can help, and it's 4 key messages. It's adopt, foster, volunteer, donate, and we tell them how each of those things will impact that particular population of pets. And we have, for the last 8 years that I've been doing this, and I have committed to transparency for 6 of those, I cannot tell you one example when that has backfired.
That's really good to hear. Okay, so animals with chronic medical conditions, how do you support families who have pets with these chronic issues when they don't have access to affordable vet care? So I guess I'd open that to the panel.
Well, there was a recent study that came out that said it costs an average of $150 to help keep a pet out of the shelter and an average of $400 once the pet comes in. And so we started making the investment. We started a grant fund, and we asked the community to help support pet owners that couldn't afford medical care. It's the greatest barrier to keeping pets. We receive about $100,000 a year into that fund. It's really shocked all of us because we thought people don't want to pay for other people's veterinary care, but really it's the contrary. They do, and so we provide limited medical support to them on a case-by-case basis, and we're able to keep out about 2,500 pets from the shelter that way just by providing resources, and we have no operational dollars for that. It's all through donation funding.
That's fantastic. And I think it also helps if you can give figures like that, because if people know that it's maybe $150 to keep an animal out of a shelter, they don't feel like they're signing a blank check. So maybe that's a good way to do it. Holly, question for you. What was the anesthetic protocol you used? I'm impressed with the mortality rates of 0.001%.
It is the anesthesia protocol involves, as soon as all the dogs get on site and their exam is done, they're given trazodone orally, and then once it's their turn to be induced or they're coming up for their surgery slot, they'll be given a pre-med of dexdomitor, ketamine, and butorphanol, and that sits, for about 10 minutes or so, and then they're induced with a 50-50 mixture of ketamine and Valium, so that's the dogs. The cats, on the other hand, they are just given all injectable anesthesia, and so that is tilazol, butorphanol, and dexdomitor, and everybody's maintained on isoflurane unless it's a male cat.
Thank you. And what do you maintain your male cats, or just total intravenous
They're
anesthesia?
just on injectable medications, because it's such a fast surgery.
Excellent. Okay. Is data being collected to measure the impact of Spayathon on homeless pet populations? Has the 35,000 desexings reduced population numbers, or is it expected to?
The answer to all of that is yes, and I unfortunately don't have any data to share with you on that, except that the University of Florida is working with the shelters in Puerto Rico to monitor all of that. And the other thing that I forgot to mention during my presentation was so the street dog population. So Spayathon is for owned pets, and yet they still have a huge street dog population. And now efforts are going to, since we've made such a great impact and we've got the owned pets rolling, now efforts are going to be geared to include street dogs as well.
Great. And another Spayathon question as well. Were follow-up services offered in the event of inspected spay sites or other complications?
Yes. So if there was any sort of post-operative complication while we were on site, the animal would come back to us if we did the surgery, or actually if we were the most convenient location. So if they, say, Cornell did their surgery, but they were closer to us that particular day, we would see any post-operative complication and handle it ourselves. But if it occurred after everybody left, then the local Puerto Rican veterinarians had agreed to see those cases. And they report directly back to the HSUS team, and they're keeping track of those complications as well. So that's all included in the mortality rate.
Excellent. And some of those questions have been answered already. Trish, what are some examples of enrichment that can be offered to pets of people who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness?
Wow. It's a little bit hard if they are actually homeless to figure out how to get them supplies, but Asheville Humane does tables in the community in the areas where we have the greater homeless population. One of the things that can help prevent animals from becoming homeless, though, is to give them crates, to give them chewies, to give them things that will keep the dogs from eating the homes. One of the cases that I saw was a really difficult house training case. She'd had the dog for over a year, and the dog had gone to the bathroom outside twice in that year. So she was at risk of losing her housing because the flooring was starting to collapse from all the urine. And all she needed was a crate and some Kongs and some instruction on how to do it. So knowing your community, knowing what people are at risk of losing their housing over can be helpful. But I would love to see more landlord outreach, just going and finding places for people to live with pets.
And it's an issue in Australia too. Pet-friendly accommodation is
I'm
something we
sure.
have a shortage of. And if anyone's a landlord, lady, whatever, land person, then it's definitely,
we
I mean,
need
preaching to the
Fluffy's
converted,
law.
but we need Fluffy's law here.
Worldwide. The other thing that the point that landlords need to hear, I am a landlord, I own a house, and I rent exclusively to people with pets, and they tend to stay there a long time. I learned that from a landlord I had in Vancouver, and he said you have to have a pet to live in his apartment building, and I met some amazing people there. He had way less turnover. He had way less crime because there were barking dogs. And people would stay there. And what he told me was, if somebody can keep an animal alive, they can probably also pay their rent on time. They can hold down a job. They can pay for the care of these animals. And he considered pet owners to be primo renters. So this is a message I would love more landlords to know.
So a question for Kristen now. If you work at a shelter where they kill for no justifiable reason, do you recommend trying to enact change from within or being a whistleblower?
So I teach students all over the U.S. who come to learn from our shelter, and this is a question we get a lot because they're still working in organizations where large groups of animals are dying with no one even knowing about it, and staff are not allowed to speak out. I think that however you feel about the no-kill movement, the advocates, the external advocates in the no-kill movement have brought us to where we are today by forcing transparency, and it really depends on the situation. I worked at one point for a police department where speaking out would have meant my job, and I couldn't do that work. It took external advocates to do it. Today, if I feel like something is wrong in our organization or one of our staff members does, we're in a culture where they're encouraged to speak out. It really depends on the situation, and oftentimes shelter staff can partner with those advocates who can do some of the work that the shelter can't do, because at the end of the day, especially in government shelters, you're often at the mercy of a budget and a government structure where you don't have much choice in the moment. So it depends, but I think that the best thing to do is to be embodying an ethic of transparency wherever you're at to the best of your abilities in your own organization. So as much as you can speak out, you should.
Thank you. So that's all the time for questions now. We've got one poll question, I think, Billy. First correct answer wins. What was the biggest driver to making Spayathon work? Location, type of pets, or organizations working together? Oh, okay. Looks like... Billy, can you tell who's correct? No. Okay. So this is our first little hiccup with Slido, but that's okay. This is new, right? So we're just trying it out. So far, I actually think it's been great, and I've never had quite an excellent panel discussion like that. So I'm super impressed with that. Is there a way of working out who got it correct? 47 people? You guys, come on. How can you be so good? I feel like I need to give a prize to someone. You want one? Okay. All right. Okay. What is the... I don't know what the prize is. I'm going to give it away anyway. I'm just doing it. Okay, here I go. What is one of the pets that Holly Putnam moved when she moved house? Who said that? Okay, you win a prize. Thank you. So you just head to the Getting to Zero stand and you can collect your prize. And everyone else, please go and grab some morning tea. We're going to be back at 10:30 a.m. sharp for the next session. And please thank our speakers. Awesome. Thank you so much.